Good morning. Welcome to Mornings with Michael. Today is Small Business Saturday Leaders, and today we have the pleasure of having Edward Brown as our guest today. Ed has 41 years in experience in real estate. He started out with EB Enterprises as president, then became CEO of Equity Bancorp. In 2010, Ed started working in radio, addressing economy, real estate, and business of the day. Not only that, trivia were touched on commercial breaks. In 2013, he joined Pacific Private Money. All the while, Ed continues his work in radio with Vern Glen of KPIX on Sports Byline USA, discussing the business of sports. He also has his own show on KSFO, hosting a real estate mastermind show. And I neglected that at 2020, Ed started as an expert witness in real estate. And so without further ado, it's great to have Edward Brown to the show.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for having me.
So Ed, how did you get involved in real estate?
So I started off, I have my bachelor's in accounting and a master's in tax, and started my own
Golden Gate University?
Yeah, and I started my own business when I was 23, doing tax and financial consulting. And it was fine, except, when you're doing financial consulting, for whatever reason, if the stock market dropped 100 points way back then, I get a phone call from a client, being upset, and it would be like, whoa, wait a minute, I didn't cause the stock market to drop. Look at long term. So I eventually got hooked up doing real estate loans, and doing basically, in the old days, it was hard money real estate loans. And so I started that company, Equity Bancorp, in I started doing it in like 1991, and then I had a business partner, and Equity Bancorp went strong for a number of years, and then I got hooked up with Mark Comp. I didn't really like being CEO. I like sales rather than being a CEO managing people. And so I got hooked up with Mark Comp, president of Pacific Private Money. He started his company in 2008. It was very small. 2010, we started, I met him, we started doing some radio together. 2013 is when he started his first fund, and that's when I helped him because I had the experience with funds. And I do go by Edward, by the way. So I know you kind of
that's right.
Edward. Yeah, I do use Edward, yes.
Well, that's awesome. Not too many people do, and so makes you special that you use Edward.
Okay, thank you.
So how did you get started in radio?
Back in 2009, I was reading, I think it was some financial magazine, and it had the top 6 financial planners in the country, and one of them happened to be in Nevada, which was really close to where I live. So I thought, well, gosh, I'm going to get in touch with this guy and see if maybe I can introduce him to the real estate loans we were offering to clients. And so he and I hit it off really well, but we didn't do any business together. And then months later, he called me up and he said, "Hey, Edward, I'm writing my second book." I said, "Gee, I didn't know you had a first book." He said, "Would you help me?" He says, this guy is so good at research that Princeton University and Fidelity Investments get in touch with him when they need research done. That's how good this guy is.
Wow.
So he said, "Edward, I've done."
What's his name?
His name is Ken Winans. And so he had, I guess, I don't remember his first book, but this second book was called Investment Atlas. And he said, "Edward, I've done all kinds of research, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, gold, ever since like the 1790s, And he says, the one area that I can't find research on is what's the rate of return of mortgage investments. Would you be willing to write that small portion of the book? And if you do, that's the last thing I need. I'll give you a copy of the book, and I'll give you a mention in the book." I said, "Sure, that sounds good."
Bingo.
So I wrote this one little page. I gave him the stats, And sure enough, about a couple of months later, I get this big, thick book in the mail. This is a big, heavy coffee book. You can still buy it on Amazon. I don't know if it's like 40 or 50 bucks, like a big coffee table called Investment Atlas. And because Brown is before Buffett, I actually got a higher profile than Warren Buffett, which is kind of fun. So then
That's awesome.
and then about a month after that, he called me up and he said, hey, Edward, would you like to be a guest on my radio show? I said, I didn't know you had a radio show. So he lives in Novato. I live in San Rafael. And the studio was, if you're familiar with KMBR, they're probably the largest in California because they have the Giants
Right.
right? And so it was a business show and it was on a station. So he asked me he says, here, I'll pick you up. We'll drive into San Francisco. It'll be a live show with callers calling in, etc. I said, that sounds like fun. So we did it and he really liked how it went. So as we were driving home, he said, Edward, you did a good job. He said, it doesn't pay anything, but he said, listen, here's the deal. My wife doesn't like the fact that I do this in addition to working 6 days a week and, going from Novato to San Francisco every Saturday. I mean, it really kind of takes up a lot of my time. Would you be willing to be, there was another co-host in LA. He says, would you like to be like a third co-host and maybe, substitute in for me, when I can't make it? I said, sure. So I started doing that. And as time went on, he just started drifting away further and further, which was kind of funny because, it was really his show. And so I was doing that for a number of months. The sponsors, though, they weren't really seeing much traction. I guess they weren't really marketing it very well. So closed that show in April of 2010. But I really liked doing radio, and really I was good at it. So I thought, well, gee, maybe I can try to get some advertisers for it and resurrect it. And one day I happened to look in the paper and I saw Mark Hanf advertising for individual trustees as investments, which is something I knew a lot of. So I called Mark up and I said, hi, we don't know each other. I'd like to meet. I'd like to see if you would be interested in doing radio with me. And he actually was a part-time guest on another show.
Wow.
Said, yeah, well, sure, come on in and we'll talk. So we talked. He gave me a business card from a guy from Fox News Radio who was trying to bug him about having his own show. And so I called this guy and worked out the details, and Mark and I started the show, The Best of Investing, in August of 2010, and we're still on. So that's actually our first radio show. The second, the national sports and business show that I have called Sports Econ 101, and the third show we added in December was the Real Estate Mastermind on KSFO. So we're kind of all over the airways.
Yeah, how is it to work with Vern Glen? I just love him when he comes on KPIX.
Yeah, so
he's got a lot of energy and exuberance.
Yeah, Vern was introduced to me because his wife and my wife knew each other. And our kids were the same age and really little. So we became friends and then just sort of, just casual friends. And then in 2013, when I started the sports show, I needed a co-host. So I called him up and he said, yeah, that sounds like fun. So we did it. He had to go off for a while, then he came back. And then now that he's been elevated to sports director, it's kind of hard for him to be back on the show. So he's had to exit being a regular co-host.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody who came up with his own ETF recently, and we were just discussing that everybody's talking about high multiples in the stock market, but when you get to sports franchises, he says it's just beyond ridiculous, the multiples that people are getting for these things.
Yeah, and again, we talk about, we try to hit as much of the economics of sports as we can. It's kind of hard because there's only so much you can talk about that's really interesting. Like I just recorded the sports show this morning, a couple hours before this show that we're recording today, and we were talking about the finals of the NBA, and the Joker will land in the Hall of Fame if he stays healthy, stuff like that. They talk about the Live Tour, merging with, which is interesting. So I had predicted the Nuggets in 5 games, and I was right. And I predicted
Okay.
when the Live Tour came out and the PGA was against it, I said, give it time, they're going to merge. There's just too much money involved. PGA is going to lose
Right.
it. Within the last couple of weeks they merged. So after the show, I'm headed to Vegas. No, just teasing.
So you live in Nevada?
I live actually in San Rafael.
Oh, in San Rafael.
Not
Okay.
far, not too far.
So tell us a little bit about your real estate business, your kind of history there.
Yeah, so Pacific Private Money has a number of funds. The two funds that I primarily concentrate on are the two, they're the most conservative. Not that the other ones are risky, but if you had to put them on a level playing field, you'd say these two are very conservative. The both of these funds, one's called the Freedom Fund, the other one's called the Southwest Note Fund. So the Freedom Fund is where we are primarily funding bridge loans to consumers who are, they own a house, they want to buy the next house, they don't want to move twice, they want to make an aggressive offer that looks like an all cash offer because we can fund quickly. And, banks just can't compete with us on that end of it. And we're probably one of just a handful of private companies licensed in California to do these owner-occupied consumer bridge loans. You can find a lot of fix and flip lenders, all over the place. But when you ask them about a house that you want to live in, now it's a consumer loan, and the rules are, Dodd-Frank and all that kind of stuff apply. I think the reason, and this is just my own personal feeling, is that it's a very expensive barrier of entry. You've got the licensing, continuing education, the legal, and the software. It could cost you $80,000 to $100,000 to get into this space. So if you're a typical fix and flip lender and you're busy, which you probably are, why do you want to spend that extra money to get into a new
Right.
space? You need it, right? Well, we decided to bite the bullet and spend the money. And it's been very good for us because as a company, we'll do probably over $750 million this year.
Wow.
Yeah, we have way too many loans to fund and not enough money. And so for that, what we're willing to do is pay the clients anywhere from 7 to 9% with relative liquidity. Now that's the thing you don't get in most funds. Most funds, you got to tie your money up for a few years. With us, you do the legal document says that you're going to be committed for a year, but we don't impose a prepayment, an early withdrawal penalty. So all we ask is for 30 days. And if there's a run on the bank, okay, maybe it takes 45 days, 60 days to liquidate your account. But the whole idea is preservation of principal and a decent rate of return. It's almost like a money market account, but you can't write checks on it. And the reason that we can provide this liquidity is because the loans that we're funding, we have relationships with some large institutions who love our loans. So we'll pick up loans, sell them, get the money back, put it back on the conveyor belt. First we ask, is anybody needing their money back? If not, then we've got this extra money to put back on more loans, because that fund alone can probably fund 15 million a week. We have lots of brokers out there who love us, bankers, brokers, real estate agents. They need a place to have, to get the funds, because especially with Silicon Valley Bank and all this kind of stuff going on, a lot of banks are very skittish. And so that, and also mortgage, a lot of other mortgage companies have downsized or closed up because the refi market has dried up considerably. When when interest rates go up, a lot of people don't refinance their house.
Right.
Okay. So there's lots of ample investment opportunity for people. We have a lot of people who just park their money there. They say, you know what, I'm not sure if I'm going to buy another piece of real estate or when I want to go back into the stock market, but my money market account's giving me what, 3 or 4%, and you guys are going to give me 7 to 9%, depending upon how much you invest, with a minimum of 250,000. And it's very, very conservative fund. So that's a great place for people to park their money. And then the Southwest Note Fund is a fund where I'm actually one of the managers. That one we're buying discounted mortgages. So it also has the same kind of liquidity features. There's no lockup. You just give us 30 days notice when you want your money back. And the reason it's very conservative is the average loan to value in the fund is 41%. But because we're buying these notes at a discount, our average investment to value is 28%. I don't think there's,
Wow.
I just don't, I don't know everything out there, but I would be very surprised if there's another fund that exists that's this conservative, because and my whole premise is don't lose money. I
Hmm.
mean, on that fund, we're just paying a flat 8.5%, no matter how much money you put in. So again, it's a good parking place for people, and it's very conservative. Um, all of our funds qualify for QBID, the Qualified Business Income Deduction, which gives for qualified people, depending upon your income, you have to pay taxes on 80% of the money, not 100%.
Oh,
And
wow.
because and in the Southwest Fund, I'm not going to give people tax advice. I want to tell them to get their
Hmm.
tax advisor, but we only send out a federal K1 because we generally don't buy loans in California,
Okay.
discounted loans. So potentially people are saving California taxes for those California investors in the fund. So, we try to make it as investor friendly and as beneficial as possible. So if people ask me, okay, what's the downside, right? Well, like on the Southwest Fund, there's two things. One, you're not going to get rich off of us. You're just going to get 8.5%. You're not going to make 20, 30% like you may or may
Hmm.
not make in the stock market or some real estate deal. This is just
Right.
income producing. The other thing is, when people hear how conservative it is, they say, well, that sounds really good. I'd like to write a check for $2 million. I say, I can't take it, because the loans we're buying, they're, 100,000 here, 50,000 here, 200,000 here. And we need to vet the loans, and I don't have the same volume in that fund as we do in the Freedom Fund. And I will not
Okay.
let people 8.5% take their money and let it sit in a 0% money market account. I don't like
Right.
negative. So
Hmm.
that's the downside. Is we can only take few $100,000 at a time.
So how did you kind of get into this type of area?
Which one, the discounted mortgages
Yeah,
or
the
the
discounted mortgages.
mortgages?
Did
Uh, Boy,
did
it's funny. My very first one I ever did was for myself back in the 80s, when I purchased a condo, but I didn't have enough money. So I had to have a
okay.
seller carry back a second. And it was at 12% interest, but no payments for 2 years. After 1 year, I called up the seller who was carrying the note. And I said, look, I owe you, I can't remember, like 20 grand or whatever it was. Um, and I said, here's the situation. I said, right now business is going pretty well, and I've got money. I don't know what's going to happen in a year from now. If you give me a discount, I'll write a check today. And he accepted it.
Oh, wow.
And then, so for whatever reason, I didn't put it together that, hey, this could be a business. And
Hmm.
and so many years went by, and I'm trying to remember exactly how that happened. Oh, I know how it happened. Is one day I decided, just for fun, to buy a fix and flip property in San Antonio, Texas. And the
Okay.
broker who got me involved said, most likely you're going to get a situation where someone's going to offer you a decent price, but they're only going to put 10% down, and you'll have to carry the balance, for 5 years or whatever, 10, 20, 15 years, whatever. But there's enough profit in there where it made sense. So I became the seller carryback on that. And after a few years, I started getting solicitations from companies saying, hey, we'd like to buy your mortgage if you need cash. I go, I wonder what's going on here. So I call them up, and my note was, I think, 150,000. And I started getting these somewhat lowball offers. And I said, wait a minute. I go, are you kidding me? I said, I'm not that desperate for money. They go, well, when you are, give us a call back, right?
Uh-huh.
So I said, forget it. And about every 6 months, there was this one company that kept sending me, hey, if you're interested. I mean, I knew it was just a generic one that they were sending.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I called them up, and I said, hey, this is Edward Brown. And I said, you guys solicited me 6 months ago. I said, has your price changed? They go, well, let's look into it again. And the price hadn't changed, you know? I said, holy smokes. I said, I'm on the wrong side of the business, because these
Hmm.
guys were trying to get like a 14% yield. And this isn't today. This was a few years ago when interest rates were even lower. I said, you know what? I want to be on your side of the table. So I started buying some discounted notes myself and to be the guinea pig. And when
Uh-huh.
this was working out pretty well, I thought, huh, maybe there's something here. And so we started a fund to buy some discounted mortgages. And now I hooked up with a company from Arizona where they buy all around the country, and they stand behind the loans. So
Hmm.
if anything goes wrong, they'll buy the loans back or they'll substitute a new loan. So we have like a, next year, a little mini guarantee. But, at the LTVs that we're at, I don't really need a guarantee because I'd love to
Hmm.
foreclose. That's when we'd make the big money, right? Try
Right.
worth 100 grand. The borrower owes 41 grand. I'm into it for 28 grand. If they default, I'm going to bid at the foreclosure the 41 grand. And if someone pays me off, great. I made a great capital gain. If not, I'm going to own the house that's worth 100 grand.
Uh-huh.
Right. So,
Yeah.
nothing's risk free, but it's conservative enough to when you do your risk analysis, I go to sleep pretty well at night, realizing that, we're going to get our monthly payment.
Well, that's great. Do you think that working in radio has helped increase your business?
A little bit, only from the standpoint that it's sort of an ooh ah type of ooh, you've got a radio show, type
Uh-huh.
of. We don't get. Uh, I mean, I guess really that's where it comes from. I mean, we do we do throw ads on the radio on big stations to try to get people to invest in like our Freedom Fund,
Hmm.
uh, and that brings in some people. But other than that, it's kind of just it's something fun to do, and it gives you a little bit of notoriety. It's funny. I got to tell you one thing that's really funny. When I first started my first show, and I have these trivia contests, and people could call in for, to win a prize. The funny thing is I'd only been doing the show for about a month, and I had this one lady call, and she said, "Hi, I'm not really interested in the prize. I just love hearing your voice." And I go, "Yee, stalker." I got one other funny story about that if you have time. Um, so when I was the co-host of the first show that was on KNBR, I started this idea of the trivia contest, and we were giving away this prize, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to have fun with this. So I said, I've got a baseball question to ask, and let's see who can win the prize. And I asked like the hardest baseball question, and even hardcore baseball fans could not even answer it, right?
Huh.
And I realized we only got like 3 phone calls during it, and everybody was way off. And then I
Okay.
realized, I said, wait a minute, I said, Edward, wait a minute, no, you should do the opposite. You should make it a little bit easier because you want a lot of people to call in,
Right.
see,
Hmm.
it's like, because that's how brand new I was in radio, right? So next week, and I say, so audience, you remember I asked this trivia question and nobody got the answer. So I said, this time we're going to make it a little bit easier. Super Bowl III, Jets versus Colts. Who was the quarterback of the Jets? And here's a hint: his name rhymes with Glow Baymouth. And you should have in 10 seconds the lights on the board, because we were doing a live show, lit up like a Christmas tree, and the guy behind
Hmm.
the glass who was answering the phone calls, he didn't flip me off, but he gave me this dirty look like, ah, too many people calling at once. So no, you're calling number 12. You're calling. I was laughing so hard I had to turn my mic off for about 2 minutes.
Oh, wow.
That was fun. Oh, so those were good times.
Well, Edward, it's been a pleasure learning about your business. And you know what? How's a good way to get in contact with you if somebody has a need to kind of use your services?
Yeah, very simple. Edward at pacificprivatemoney.com. Nice and
Awesome.
simple. Yeah. Thank you for having
Well,
me.
Edward, it was a pleasure having you, and I learned a lot from just you sharing different stories with us.
Thank you
So
very
we
much.
look forward to seeing you next time you're on or hearing you, and next time you're on KSFO or uh, On with Vern Glen. Uh, that show can be found where now? The
So
show with
now Sports Econ 101 is nationally syndicated. So we're actually on hundreds of stations across the US. If you go to Sports Byline USA, because they're our producer, they have podcasts on there, and then you can also find out what other stations are on. Because I can't control when, like let's say in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, when they're going to air. But we also we're on Sirius XM.
oh
I
yeah,
think,
I did see that.
yeah, it's but it's not on. I think you have to stream it. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I don't have, shh, don't tell anybody. I don't have Sirius XM. Because the thing is where I live, and every time I travel, there's so many buildings that
Hmm.
keep losing the signal. So I said, this isn't worth it. But if you look up Sports Econ 101, you'll find us.
Awesome.
We have all kinds of
Well,
YouTube.
well, thanks again for joining Mornings with Michael. Um, we look forward to having you on sometime in the future.
That's
And
it.
everybody, thanks for joining in. We hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we look forward to catching up with you again on Monday.
Thank you, Michael.